everybody. Welcome. I'm Howie Howard from Mr. Furious Records. Today on Dat Fury Radio, guest Cory Kibler is back, and we are beginning to celebrate 20 years of Mr. Furious Records. Feels weird to say, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that in probably 6 parts, spaced out every 2 or 3 weeks in the coming months. So you're not going to get it all at once, but we are going to start, and we're going to start all the way back at the beginning. I'll explain more about that in a second, but Cory Kibler, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I was telling Howie before this that I was trying to use my Bluetooth headphones, but I had to use wired headphones because they're the only ones that connect. And these are old Skull Candy headphones that are crumbling. So I have like black dust all over my desktop. So hopefully it doesn't sprinkle too loudly. But I'm good.
True Mr. Furious style. Just scrape them by with whatever we can cobble together. So what we're gonna do for this 20-year kind of celebration, for 10 years we did a comp called Mr. 10 that was really fun. We covered each other's songs. I wasn't in a place to kind of get that together for Mr. 20. It is on deck, hopefully, for Mr. 25. So in a little bit, hopefully we'll do that again. But for 20 years, the plan is we've got this compilation called Mr. Signal. It's on MrFuriousRecords.bandcamp.com. That's the only place it is. Because we add to it every time we put out a release. So this goes all the way back to the beginning. A few even extra tracks sprinkled in, 3, I think, that aren't on the label but are important to the story, and I'll talk about those when we get to them. But Mr. Signal is in reverse chronological order. So when you hit play, you hear the newest stuff, and you go back in time. We're going to start at the beginning and go the other way. So we're going to go forward. And that's going to be... So we'll get the music. We have a lot of music to listen to tonight. This is almost a long play style. So I'll get the music going in a second. But actually, let me just do it now. Why don't I do it now?
Yeah.
But we have a story for the first track. Hopefully we'll have stories for all the tracks.
Every time I got something to say to you, you go ahead and you check my spelling. Every time I feel like I got something to prove, you do your best to talk me.
All right, so here we go. Shacker, Talk Me Down. This wasn't actually on the label until last year, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So the deal with this is, it said we wanted to put a label on the CD as like a joke. So we put on there Mr. Furious Records catalog number 225.
Oh, that's right, because that was our room number.
That was our room number in Freeze. You lived there freshman year with James, right?
Yep. Or sophomore year, yeah.
Oh, you were sophomore?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I was in there. I was in that same room my junior year. Cory and I are the same age. So yeah, when we printed up the first Shacker album, we put Mr. Furious Records 225 on the back of it, just to make it seem more official, I guess.
Totally, that was it.
And I know you stay on the same note. But yeah, it wasn't, there were no thoughts about the future at that point. It was just a one-off inside joke, something to put on the CD or whatever.
Yeah, it felt right. It felt official to put a label name on there. Like, I don't know who I thought was going to see it and be impressed by it, but anyway, it was cool to put it on there. And then it felt kind of sad, I think, to put 0001
right,
or whatever.
There's no cred for 01.
No. But if you put out 224 records first, then it can't be bad.
Now we're talking. So this is pre Mr. Furious, the label. technically. 2003.
I'm always impressed by this Shatter record, but like when I listen back, it sounds so good for your first like official record in your house.
Yeah, no, we are listening to the remaster, I believe.
But still, though, just like the
But it does sound good.
tracks.
And so this then is the first official release. Shacker's second record, Knowing Her Best, Blackbeard Defends the Open Sea. I think this is also the remaster. I remastered all this Shacker stuff last year or 2 years ago, maybe. But yeah, so we finished at Doane, graduated in 2004. I moved to Minneapolis. We recorded 2 projects that summer. We banked them, and it's this one. Maybe we started in the spring, and the Echoes EP. The song is coming next. But we recorded over the spring and summer. I got to Minneapolis, got settled, built a website, and sometime in September, I don't have the exact date in front of me, but sometime in September, launched the website along with these 2 projects, Shacker's Knowing Her Best and the Echoes Nickel EP, posted to the Internet Archive, where they remain to this day.
That's so awesome. This song, the first thing I think of is that I used not my crate amp to record it. Because on the first record, I used that big, like nasty crate solid state amp that had really no like range of tone at all. And then for this one, I used your tube amp. And I really didn't use too much like fuzz. It was just kind of like how hard I played the notes.
Yeah, this was my Hot Rod Deluxe.
There we go.
And yeah, it sounds great. So, and we recorded this, we tracked this live, the 3 of us together, with the setup in my parents' house, the house I grew up in, my drums in what we called the music room with the giant piano and everything. James and his bass and bass amp, and I think I just took a line for the bass, so the bass is direct, I think. I don't know if he would have had the amp on for monitoring, and there would have been some bleed in the drum mics, but I don't know if we mic'd the bass amp.
I forgot that we recorded this live.
Yeah, this is all, the tempos they move on some of them. This song more than others, but I love that. I love that we did that.
Same.
But the amp that I owned that you were playing through was in that little closet off the music room. So that was our isolation booth, and it worked really well for that.
It did. And then, I must have come back to your house like after we got all the songs tracked to do vocals.
Yeah. I used so you didn't double these guitar parts. What there is, your rhythm guitar is copied in Pro Tools, and then there's a like 30 millisecond delay
of the slap
one
echo.
Of them, and they're hard pan. It's shorter even than a slap. You don't really process it as a delay. There's no feedback.
Oh.
You just process it as stereo separation because they're hard panned.
Okay.
So that's why there's like some width to the mix. And then there's a few guitar overdubs and solos and stuff, but it's
cool
pretty much just the trio.
The evolution between the first record and the second record. I think there was like real growth there.
For sure. The playing, the songwriting, the production. I still really like how Blackbeard Knowing Her Best sounds. I like the first one too, but
yeah,
definitely a step up. So this is me solo as Echoes. The song's called Open Columns.
Yeah.
My first solo recordings. I'd done all the stuff with Scott and all the Shacker stuff and been in other bands, but these are my first solo recordings, this EP.
Was this the first song on the EP?
I think this is track 4. The first song is Oh, it's one of those kind of overwrought Howie.
Well, what do you
Howie
mean?
songs. I just mean kind of wordy.
I was just joking. Yeah, totally. No, I totally get it.
Oh, gotcha.
It's like those first, like, I love listening to our first like outings, like the Shaker records, my first solo records or whatever. Like, I can look back at like Silent Woods with fondness now, rather than being like, oh woof, I wish I would have made some different choices. Like, it feels like very endearing at this point.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
the songs
are
were
fun.
good.
The songs are good. This is a good. I stand by this song. This is
It's
a good
great.
song. This song, I remember writing this song. Actually, I don't remember writing a lot of the earlier songs or later songs, but this one, I had just read The Power of One, which is a novel about a South African kid and boxing and mentorship and all kinds of things. There, even that line, knockout punch, you know, is kind of a boxing reference and a Power of One reference. So Mom had suggested I read the novel, and I read it and liked it pretty well. And I remember sitting on the back steps of the old house with a guitar and just like this one just kind of coming to me, you know.
There is some. Oh, I love this part. There's some really fun pop punk going on back.
Yeah, pretty straightforward after all the Howie and Scott stuff, right?
Yeah,
Like
totally.
this was
It's
the
a
first song on
4/4
the
rock and
EP.
roll.
Yeah, the first song on the EP was called "The Spoken Word as Catalyst,"
There we go.
which is a little that's heavy on the poetical side of things.
That
you know?
actually sounds like a early Cory title. Like, it's like I'd glom onto certain words and use the hell out of them, and so I think it was a catalyst era for me.
Well, and I mean, to zoom out a little bit, like the story, your music and my music is so intertwined, not only through projects we've literally done together, but through that mutual influence. And I mean, I hardly gave melody a passing thought until I was in a band with you, and you know, for me it was all chords and rhythm and lyrics, but melody was just whatever facilitated getting the lyrics out, you know.
Sure.
So everything melodic I've ever done basically traces back to you in one way or another.
That's awesome. I mean, even if it's a small seed, but that's awesome.
Totally. But what I'm getting to is, while that influence is ongoing and, you know, over 20 years long at this point, these early Mr. Furious years is very much, you know, you and me at the core of it.
Totally. I think, like, if your thing is melody, I think my thing has definitely been tone. That is something I didn't think about at all. I mean, there's a few things, but tone especially, like, I would just play through my crate amp clean, and the tone was god-awful. Oh, yeah. This was a fun project to record.
This was super fun. So, yeah, the Shaker, the acoustic record, what's it called?
Dimly Lit Room.
A Dimly Lit Room. The Dimly Lit Room. Which it literally was. We're again at my folks' house, the house I grew up in. It was a rainy night. The four of us played together. In the living room, we lit some candles and just sat in a circle, and I played guitar, you know, and I remember I went into the music room for some isolation on the one or two I did the djembe drum on.
Oh, sure.
But for the most part, we sat in a circle in a dimly lit room and just played these songs.
I
No
feel like we
edits,
knocked them out
you know.
pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, this is a lovely project.
which is pretty crazy, like to do a whole record. Like there was a few solo-ish songs I added on to the end of it.
Yeah, that was a different session.
Hipters. But yeah, so we had, me, you, Annie, Jamie, and it just came together really well. I really like my vocal takes on these songs better than I do on the records.
Yeah, it's your voice sounds really good. I think intimate, close mic'd. When you're not necessarily pushing, you're comfortable. That's when your voice shines, I think, and this highlights that.
Oh yeah.
So this is me playing the rhythm, like composed part, and you improvising the solo.
And I like
a cool little. Go
James's
ahead.
bass. Oh, just his little James's bass there. How it comes in after the first phrase. It's really cool.
Great choices. A cool little production thing. So this was my first experiment in hybrid mixing. We tracked into Pro Tools, but I had read about Trent Reznor taking digital recordings and running them back out to an analog console for the mix. And I thought that sounded cool and wanted to try that. And I did that with my crappy little Behringer mixer.
I don't think I knew that.
And it actually turned out great. I mean, this is a great project to do it where everything's very consistent. We just like a live session, so there weren't a lot of changes to make. But yeah, I hybrid mixed this, ran the individual tracks back out to the board and recorded stereo in, and went through a few revisions of that.
It's a super consistent recording session. I remember, I don't think I even tuned my guitar once. That's crazy. So, what is this? Oh,
This is Bike.
Bike. Yeah.
So this is the start of another kind of thread with Mr. Furious of, especially you, this is mostly your contribution, bringing in other artists and other friends from the wider scene. So this artist, Nate Driver, is a friend of Cory's from California. You want to talk about Nate for a second?
Sure. So Nate and I, we were in our first band together, Morona, which was taken from the tag of a Target shirt before we played a talent show. We didn't have a name. So yeah, we were being pretty cheeky. But anyway, he always played guitar and he would record our records on his he had a little Blue 4 track. And then eventually got a Roland kind of digital 8-track or something. But anyway, he got really into just kind of recording and producing music on his own, and would just do music on his computer in his room. And he did some guitar stuff. He was always a good guitarist, and he would even sing a little bit, even though he hadn't sung traditionally. But he's got a really good voice. And this was kind of his production stuff, and it's a more the first song on this EP, I think, is "He's Come to Steal Your Children," which is a weirdo.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know why I thought that would help. But anyway, but this is a really beautiful tune. Kind of he was really into spiritualized. He loves Radiohead, but he loves spiritualized and Air and things like that. So you can hear that really pretty sad British stuff going on.
I adore this record. I think I'm gonna do a press play on the podcast on it soon. But I absolutely adore this record, and it came to us at a time. This was also that year in Minnesota, and I was discovering and getting super into Dosh. And so this kind of loop-based instrumental, somewhat, I don't want to call it genreless, but it's not hip-hop, it's not dance music, but it's samples and loops and overdubs, and it just hit me at the right time, kind of. And this record, the whole thing is like a warm comfort blanket to me to this day.
I'm surprised at how quickly it came back to me. I hadn't heard that in a really long time.
You should listen to it again. It holds up. It's great.
I totally will.
I feel like I had one last thing to say about the acoustic Shacker record, but I don't remember. Oh, the hip. I was going to tell the hipster story.
Yes, please.
So here's Cory doing a solo song as Beach Puppy, but hipster. So there's on the Shacker acoustic record, there's a version of, I think the song's called "Prove It," right?
Oh, I think it's "Goddamn the Scene."
That's right.
With hipsters in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the song, "Goddamn the Scene," and Cory, like, especially at the time, like, hated doing vocal takes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a line in the song where the lyric, something about all these cross-armed hipsters.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. That's it.
And he's saying it. Cory's saying it as hipsters with no S in the middle. Very obvious. Like, just, it wasn't there at all. You didn't enunciate it, period.
Yeah, there's no question. It wasn't
no
a halfway.
question.
Yeah.
And you didn't want to do another take. So I had to fly in
An S
from a different word and paste it in and crossfade it so that it would sort of sound like a hipster's.
That is so buck wild for me to hear. Like, I know it's true. I was there. I know this story actually happened. But that is like, it's like I can, untreated attention deficit is all over that. And just like, I don't want to say like laziness, but kind of like I would do vocal takes and I'd be like, it would start to hurt if I had to do more. It was this dumbest thing. So, which is...
No, it's definitely, we say it and we laugh about it with love, but like one aspect of the story is definitely the importance of mental health treatment.
Yeah. It's so funny to fly in and to have to Howie having to do all that work just because I probably had like an Arby's to be at or something. I don't know. I was like, I gotta get out of here.
Unexplainable to me.
Oh, I love that little percussion thing. That was an accident. It was just
totally just the guitar creaking.
Yep, Mike Papani's acoustic. Yeah, so Mike Papani recorded these tracks in Ventura after I graduated college, and we sent the tracks to Howie. And it was, did I play and sing at the same time? I did, didn't I?
think so. I think you sent me just one mic, probably.
Yep.
And I overdubbed. So when I lived in Minnesota, I rented a bedroom from this older couple, very sweet, Bob and Nan. And they had this great house by the lake, but they would vacation, like just go, they had a cabin in Wisconsin and would just like go for a weekend or a long weekend or whatever and leave me alone. And they did have this like, I don't know what you would call it. It was a fairly large room, but it was full of antique furniture and stuff, and we never hung out there. Like, it was just a room for displaying things, kind of. And it had this old piano, fairly small piano, kind of out of tune, as you hear. And yeah, so I just wrote these little piano overdubs and did the harmony vocals during a weekend that they were in Wisconsin. I set the mic up like way across at the other end of the room for just
room.
So there's a lot of room sound. Yeah.
I was, when you sent me the tracks, like the first mixes with your vocals and the piano, I was so delighted. It was exactly the vibe I was going for, like haunted mansion folk music or something like that. Just creepy, but like really pretty.
Yeah, and it was an awesome challenge to not overdo it, right? Because your part was so hushed, kind of. I didn't want to overwhelm, and that's an ongoing thing between us. Is just,
yeah, I know.
You have a voice that sounds better in a more intimate kind of setting, and I'm kind of a belter, and so just finding how do we make that match, especially when I'm doing the harmony. How do we do that to where I'm not overwhelming you?
There was that. song we did recently where we did sort of a double lead, and I recorded way up close to the microphone, but it was like loud up close kind of.
Yeah.
And then Howie was back behind the mic a little bit and like belted it. So I know that was, I keep sending Howie these very hushed, intimate vocal tracks that are very tricky to deal with. So I appreciate it.
That was the one for Fight Songs, right? The
There we
second
go.
track?
Yep, that's it. Yep.
Yeah. So this is Scott Morris and Alan Gilbert fooling around in the Doan band room one day. They sent me... Well, we put out 2 songs of this kind of free jazz. But I fairly recently discovered there's actually a 3rd track
What?
that I had forgotten about, and it's really good. I don't know why we didn't put it out at the time. It's different than the other 2.
Scott's Dark Secret, that 3rd
So-
jazz track. I want to hear it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw it. I'm going to relaunch Furious Instance, which is our ongoing compilation of odds and ends and B-sides and whatever. So it's perfect for that. So I'm going to get that done next year.
This music in particular is something that I appreciate a lot more now than I did when it was released. It's not that I didn't like realize it is good. Like Scott and Alan are both so good at music, like whatever they're playing. But I don't think I quite got this at the like I wasn't a jazz understander.
Sure, yeah, this was weird, but I truly think they just had an afternoon to kill. Like, I don't think there was much planning involved in this, if I remember. And I loved... So, both, like, within my projects and for the label as a whole, I love staking out a wide range of territory that we can explore. And so, this was the 5th release, and I loved having something really weird and different from friends and people we know, but something that sonically was just so out there to say, this is going to be in bounds for Mr. Furious, you know?
Mr. Furious really has been all over the place. Like free jazz, art music, pop punk, like some metal doomy stuff, like Night Mode.
Yeah.
So cool.
You know, one thing we don't actually have that's been on my mind for a long time is some actual traditional folk music from any culture. That's a gap in our Dewey Decimal.
Right. I think, like, maybe the closest we would have gotten is Where Did I Go Wrong or something like that. But
We have
that's
tons
still,
of... Go ahead.
Oh, just that it's still not quite... It's it's folk in that it's acoustic.
Right. We have tons of folk influenced
Yeah.
indie rock.
Yep.
But we don't have anything that's like actual oral tradition from
Like
any
roots music.
culture. Yeah.
Sure.
Scott's saxophone timbre is so deep in me. When I listen to any saxophonist, I know if Scott's gonna like their sound or not, based on how it relates to his.
I love that. Of you sitting in a jazz club and being like, man, Scott would hate this. I mean, like, when did you and Scott start playing music together?
Oh, it's a little outside of Mr. Furious, but I'll tell that story. So, my sophomore year of high school, I was loaned a classical guitar and started fooling around and teaching myself based on tabs, mostly wrong tabs on the internet, you know, and stuff. So I was jamming. Scott obviously played on his own. I shouldn't say jam. I was playing at home in front of the computer by myself.
Sure.
Eventually, I taught myself to sing and play My first song I could sing and play was Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town. Played the guitar totally wrong, but I could get through the song, you know? And so I think it must have been the following year when I would have been 17, junior year. And I was, and you know this from Doan too, I was totally the guitar guy at any type of party or gathering. But we were scheduled to have a home track meet, which would have been at Doan, and it got rained out. So all the track kids had nothing to do and ended up in the Morris basement, which is right next to the track,
Sure.
playing pool and whatever. And I was doing my guitar guy thing and sitting in the corner strumming my guitar. And someone, I want to say it was Cory Florendo, I could be wrong about that, but someone said, "Hey Scott, you should get your saxophone out and play with Howie." And he did, and we just fooled around on whatever songs I knew, and he's got such a great ear and everything, he could just play along. And after, I don't know, a half hour or so, we kind of looked at each other like, hey, this could be something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we started playing together.
That's a lovely moment when that happens, like when it just works.
Pretty huge in retrospect. So this is D Rockets, Derek Jennings, another friend of Cory's. Yeah, go ahead, do the D Rockets story.
Oh, just that. So there's this friend I had at Ventura named Derek Jennings, and he is a very prolific, or was at least, music writer, releaser. And he was in this band called The Return that was really big in Ventura, and not just big, like they weren't just popular, they were also really, 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 really good. The three of them had been playing around since they were like 14 or something, and they just slayed. Each of them was just really good at their instrument. And I met him through mutual friends. He went to a different high school, like in Oxnard or something. And our friend Weiss Carver worked at a Sonora Sound in Hollywood as a recording engineer. So when I was living in Ventura, Derek and I drove down at nighttime to get free studio time at like midnight at Sonora C, I think it was called. And Weiss Carver recorded us. And I did a few songs that some of them worked out okay, but Derek's were awesome. And like, he's just a very, very good songwriter and performer. And
yeah, Derek's amazing. So this is just a 4-song EP. All 4 songs are killer. His main band around that time, The Return, was one of those bands that was so good, when you saw them, you'd want to quit music.
I get pissed, yeah.
Because you'd just be like, I can't do that. There's no path for me to get there, and that is awesome, and I want to get there, and I know I never will. And that's a feeling I have from time to time. I get over it, and it does push me in the end. But in the moment, man, you see them, and you're just like, this is both so amazing and so depressing at the same time.
It kind of hurts. Like, in my life, when I felt real jealousy or something, or like not even jealousy, but just like awe and despair, has been during those moments. And a lot of times it's been watching a Return concert, 'cause I've seen him several times. And it's different if you go see a band that's like a mid-level indie or, kind of mainstream band, and they're really, really good, it sort of doesn't have the same impact it does when it's someone you know. Because you're like, oh, Jesus, look at him go. Like, so, yeah, I mean, like, Derek was well-known, and The Return were well-known in Ventura County area. Just really, really good.
Was he with us? So the one time I visited Ventura with you, do you remember we played a weird, like, midday show where no one was there at a restaurant?
Yeah, it was like a little cafe with like a tiny little stage, and Derek played with us. Yep, it was me, you, and Derek. Yep.
Yeah, we just played for each other.
Yep.
I remember the stage was covered in super fake turf grass carpet.
I didn't remember that, but that's hilarious.
And it made me, that place, that cafe, and the old garden cafe in Lincoln is like mixed up in my memory.
It's awesome. I thought about this song the other day out of nowhere, not even thinking about this podcast.
Such a good
or
song.
Yeah.
So this is Alan Gilbert as Gilby, solo recording that kicked off the original Furious Instance Odds and Ends compilation. This was just like, if I remember, he was just learning how to record himself, and he almost wrote the song as a recording exercise to give himself something to work on. He also played for me around this time. He had recreated, I think, Clocks by Coldplay. Instrument by instrument, he could play everything,
Sure.
you know, and just to like train himself and teach himself about recording techniques, he just made a cover, like a very accurate cover of Clocks.
It's neat hearing. So he was the one
is so
playing
great.
drums on the Scott Jazz song.
Yeah.
Now he's doing this straight up like pop punk. Even his guitar tone is very pop punk.
This should have been like track 19 on some Warped Tour comp, and
Yeah.
like been everybody's favorite from that year, you know?
This is
It's
like
got the crazy church organ.
It's so good. It does remind me, there's a lot of bands that I listened to in that era, and especially in high school, that wrote very emotional, kind of like heavy songs or something about very almost silly like topics. Like I know this song is about more than actually literally eating lunch by yourself, but it's like it has like a Goldfinger, Real Big Fish kind of tude to it.
So we're gonna go back in time here, back to Charlie's house.
Oh snap! I had no idea this was going to be on here.
It's called Charlie's House.
So this is Josh Oberndorfer and Cory and me in our band from our freshman year called the Remnants, who was a full band, but the only recording we made was literally on move out day in
That's right.
at the end of our freshman year,
We recorded this in an empty dorm room, I think.
in an empty dorm room with a 4-track cassette and 2 acoustic guitars and a djembe. Matt Weiscarver, who was in the band, was not present, and this is all we have of the Remnants. Is we did like 8 or 9 songs. Some are covered. There's a Weezer cover and a Radiohead cover, Pixies cover. But yeah, I put this out on the. So this is Mr. Furious 09, release catalog number 09. And I pulled together, again, some odds and ends from the college years, some live stuff called Nebraska Verses. And that, if you think about, so I was, at this point, kind of wrapping up my year in Minnesota and job searching, where I'd end up in Kansas City, but like, in my life, it was a real time of kind of looking back at Nebraska and college as a. Obviously, I was close to it, but something that was over,
Sure.
you know, and collecting what I had from that time and packaging it up and putting it out.
What was the name of this EP? Did this EP have a name?
We never released the recording. I think there's 2 songs on Nebraska Verses, and I have the rest, but we never released it. It's
Okay.
The only released Remnants material is on this compilation, and I think it's 2
So
songs.
funny.
But I can send it to you or anyone who's dying to hear it.
I would love to hear. I don't know if that's true for anybody else, but I like the Remnants, if nothing else, were like a good college party band. Like we played Halloween Havoc.
We crushed Halloween Havoc. Yeah,
That was super fun, and we played a few like parties. I have a picture of us playing a quad party, and you have a djembe, and oh no, that would have been no. The picture I'm thinking of is you, me, Josh, and Weiscarver and Butler practicing, and I have a purple Pizza Hut t-shirt on. Anyway, but probably Josh and I got there half an hour after we said we'd get there, and then he probably laid down at the end of the practice. But anyway, it was very fun. It was a very fun band to be in. For me, anyway.
No, I had fun. Two stories. So I ended up buying a couple, well, just like a year later, your guitar that you played in the Remnants.
Yeah.
Which is a Strat style guitar. But when I bought it, and I believe it's right over here, and I think to this day it's still in the same soft case. When I bought it, and I think until this moment, your fake mustache from your Halloween Havoc costume was in the pocket of the guitar soft case. I think it's still in there.
That's good. That's right, because I was dressed as old Benicio del Toro from Fear and Loathing, Dr. Gonzo. Yep, okay. And what's the other story? Did you have another story?
Yeah, and it was just that I didn't know Charlie. Charlie's a real guy.
Yes.
A friend of yours and Josh's. And decades later, I met Charlie for real.
That's right. Where did you meet him
in
again?
Denver. It might have been Alyssa's wedding or just another time we visited you in Denver. It might have been when we were recording Cool Drugs and your daughter was born.
That sounds right. Yep.
Was that it?
Yep.
Yeah, because I don't think Carrie Ann was there.
Nope.
It was the weekend we were recording the second Cool Drugs EP, which we'll get to in episode 5, maybe.
Yeah.
Of this little sub podcast. This is another bike song. Called The Horror. Oh, The Horror.
Slays.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
good.
I think this might have... Who's the drummer from Sexual Jedi? I think it might be that drummer.
Oh, Mike Capani.
I think it might be Mike on drums.
Yeah.
Because the drums crush.
It sounds...
Nothing against Nate, but...
Yeah. Yeah, no, Nate's not a drummer. This sounds like Mike Capani.
I hope I've said it enough over the years, but I really appreciate and love the music that you brought onto the label from your friends from California and Denver and stuff, and Lincoln. Okay, you're back.
Okay.
Yeah, mic check.
Yep, I'm here.
Yep, okay. I think I lost that thing you said about the blossoming, just that last sentence.
Oh, I mean, that's all. Like, just it's neat. It's neat that friends from elsewhere were stoked to get in on it, and especially like even for Mr. 10, Nate and his then wife Amanda recorded a Derek song, which is neat. Like that they, I don't know, came back around after 10 years of him releasing a few EPs on the site.
Yeah, we tried to get Nate to join us tonight, and we'll try more. I would love to talk to Nate. I actually think I've only ever talked to Nate on email. So we're nearing the end. So this episode of the Sub Podcast is covering 2004 and 2005. We've got 3 songs left for 2000. Oh, sorry, just 2 songs left.
Oh, really?
And yeah, so this is the first album from MS Ride, known at the time as Sally Ride, which is sort of a I guess it's really a solo project. You were deeply involved in this record.
Yeah, I would definitely call it a Howie, because you wrote all the songs. Like, we messed around with this one together, but you'd already written the music, but we wrote the lyrics together behind Freeze.
Yeah. Yeah, you were involved in some of the writing. So there was the origin story of MS Ride is we're sitting behind the dorm on a sunny afternoon and with guitars, and I was just fooling around, and the song that would become a Come On just kind of popped out spontaneously as I remember it. And I surprised myself because it had this, it came as a character, and it had this edge to it.
Yeah.
And this sarcastic streak that was not my, like, fully, what's the word? It was like one little facet of my personality blown up into the whole for the purpose of the music. And it was the first time that had happened to me that, and this has since become like a very important part of so much of my music, to have some space between the author and the work. But this first time, it just kind of happened spontaneously, and I loved it. I was super into it, and it opened just so many doors for me to write in different styles, to explore different genres, both of which are things I continue to do to this day. And yeah, before I talk about the production, what do you remember from that afternoon?
I remember hearing a bit of the Come On, and then I remember us goofing around, head bone connected to neck bone, and then it kind of like, again, we're both like, actually this kind of rips, and it totally like came together. And this was like, doing this whole record was a huge challenge for me because I'd never played as a player on somebody else's songs. Like, I'd always written my own songs, and other people had to play along with that or whatever. And so I remember it being a huge learning curve for me to, like, because I was kind of in that headspace where I felt like I had to play the entire time or something. You know what I mean? Which is like,
and a lot
really
of that turned out really good. But yeah, it
turned out well, but it was a process. But it was really fun. We recorded it in Minneapolis with my Uncle Dave, who's a radio DJ, and he provided the interludes for those characters and personas.
Into the night we climb.
So I'd moved to Minneapolis with some or most of the Sally Ride, MS Ride songs, and recorded them myself, programmed the drums, which would become an ongoing thing, using samples I had made from Shacker recordings.
Right.
Did the bass by myself.
Samples.
Yeah, so when Cory came up, I had been for months programming the drums, recording bass, rhythm guitar, vocals, and like all that was done. Cory came up and did the leads and the harmonies in like a couple days at Uncle Dave's house. Yeah, I should say quick, so I named the project Sally Ride. Sally Ride is a genuine hero of mine. And I've followed her scientific career since I was a kid. And in initially naming my solo project that, it was meant as a real honor and aspiration, and I enjoyed the slight gender bendiness of it and the way that intersected with, again, that distance between author and music. Yeah, of course, I've come to realize that name was not mine to use in that way. And so another thing I'll be doing in 2025 is re-uploading and releasing everything, all the old stuff under MS Ride, and kind of retconning it all and making it right, which I think is the right thing to do. No one's ever complained. We're not big enough for anyone to have ever complained.
Yeah, been served papers.
Yeah, but it's definitely, I've come to see, is the right thing to do.
While this song is playing, I want to say, so I love so much of Howie's music. Like, with every record he puts out, I'm like impressed all over again. But this is definitely in top 5, if not top 3 favorite Howie songs. I know you love this song. It's such a vibe, like perfect. It was a Christmas song, right? It was written as
yeah, this came out for Xmas. The launch of Xmas, our holiday compilation, at the end of 2005, which is where we're going to end kind of this segment of the look back.
I love, any music that makes me think of drinking coffee next to a really icy window while it's snowing outside. And plus, it's just a beautiful song.
Yeah, good tune. The production is very Death Cab influenced, as you can hear, which I know you love. I'm not gonna lie, it's a tough listen these days.
Yeah.
It's the season.
Because
I don't know what it means
I mean, I love it. But it's most of the people listening to this know exactly what I'm thinking about right now. But for anyone who doesn't, I mean, this song is about my sister, who died in 2014. So, thinking. I love thinking about her. I think about her often, but music sure brings it back, and particularly a song about, in part, about missing somebody, wanting to see somebody, actually seeing somebody, you don't see all the time. It's not only does it touch on her, but the subject matter just goes like right to the thing, which makes it, that gives it power. But it's I knew it was coming, and it's fine, but I wouldn't want to be caught by surprise by the song.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to kind of psych myself up for it. It's still good to hear. I definitely stand by the song, and it was an early experiment, maybe success in writing more directly and trying to. My writing started with like very, very much in poetry land, and in a lot of ways ever since. And this, maybe this is a good place to, this going back to your influence on me, I continue to try and tack back to simplicity and directness and honesty. And I'm actually surprised to hear how far I'd gotten between, say, 2002, Near and Far, and 2005, Snow as a Bear,
There was an incredible amount of like growth, and I know that, like physiologically and neurologically, like when you're 17 or 18, and then when you're like 22 or 23, those 4 or 5 years have such massive like evolution in them. Like people just grow so much in so many different ways. And the like comparing, like for example, like the first Remnant song to like some of the stuff we were doing at the end of college or after college is pretty crazy. But Snow as a Bear is really awesome too, because I think it was like it was the first time I'd ever heard you get kind of weird with the production, I guess. Like there's some really like cool, interesting choices in there.
Yeah, I recorded that in the Carriage House, which my friends will recognize as a place I lived and really enjoyed for a few years in Kansas City. But yeah, so that a couple of little production notes. That drum sound, I believe, was one mic, kind of the overhead, like 6 feet up and out in front kind of technique. And then it's got that sort of drone. It's not actually guitar feedback. It's, resting the headstock against the amp and letting it kind of, I guess it is feedback. It's not feedback through the air. There's a physical connection.
Sure.
And you lean the instrument on the amp and it, certain notes will maybe resonate. And then Scott, this was the time Scott was playing saxophone on the cruise ships. So I sent him the song, and he, on the cruise ship in his cabin or wherever, maybe on the stage in a down, in an off time, recorded that flute. And then on Xmas, there's a saxophone like outro. It's really an interlude into the next song. It's a separate kind of piece, but he recorded both of those on the ship and emailed them back to me to fly into the session. So we didn't get together for that.
I had forgotten about that too. I forgot that he was on a cruise ship with his saxophone for a while.
Huh? That's the thing. I think he did 18 months, 3 tours.
That's wild.
Yeah. So and maybe this is a great place maybe to end. Is it's fun to revisit this stuff and still tell all the stories we've been through is stuff that's basically fresh in my mind, or if not fresh, accessible. Mm-hmm. But it's fun that I still think a lot of them are things we've never said or written or told anyone. So I love having this record to go back to and to be able to guide others back to you or people who may have forgotten, and this can bring something back for them. That's kind of why I've been at it all this time. So one last thing to tell you, and if you have any closing thoughts, get them ready. But I've always maintained a really good search functionality on MrFuriousRecords.com because I use it myself to look back at stuff and refresh my memory. I went all the way back in the blog to see if we ever wrote anything or said anything about like Nate and Bike and how that happened. And there's two posts that you wrote called like a history of Bike, but it's a history of Bike part 1 of 3, a history of Bike part 2 of 3, and part 3 was never published. So some poor soul out there on the internet's been waiting 20 years for a history of Bike part 3.
Nate's mom is checking every day, refreshing, just like, come on, Nathan. What could I have was I making stuff up? Was it like made up stuff?
No, it was real. It was real. It was a lot of what you've actually just said.
Just so presumptuous to say part 1 or 2 of 3. It's so silly. Like, why? That was like, I just decided it was going to be a trilogy when I started writing, even though there was zero need for it. Anyway, part 3 is oral. It's right now. Nate's doing great.
And it does cut off. Like part 2 ends on a cliffhanger.
Oh my God. The ending, here's my closing thought. Howie came to Ventura with me, and it was super fun. And on the plane ride out there, we started talking about Nate's alter ego, Etan, and the idea that he always flies by or falls through when you least expect it, and there's always a Doppler effect. So we were talking about looking out the plane window and seeing him wearing like old-timey pilot goggles and holding a bottle of Jim Beam or something and going, ah! And but he didn't actually do that. So things are good. Things are good for him.
Yeah, but that is a running bit I think about regularly and always if I'm on an airplane.
Yeah.
Definitely going to think about that bit. Well, this has been fun. Cory Kibler, we'll have you back for part 2, and then we'll be rotating. I'll certainly invite you to any other parts you want to join on, but I'll be having sort of different featured guests related to the releases of that time frame, and trying to tell the story that way. But you're going to be my featured guest for part 2.
Yeah.
Coming in a few weeks. And everybody listening, thank you for tuning in to Dat Fury Radio. And we'll be back at you soon. You can listen to Mr. Signal, the compilation we're pulling all this stuff from, at mrfuriousrecords.bandcamp.com. Link in the show notes and description. Like and subscribe. Do the things. Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye.
You got to do that intimate bye.
Bye.
You can't do the bye in full voice, just like you're singing.
Say bye. I do that too. So I'll do a Marco Polo with Muff once in a while, like the video, whatever. And every time I sign off, I just go bye, and then I cancel it while I'm still holding the note. So he probably hates it. You said
I'm going to leave this in. Do it now.
Oh. Bye.